The window for nominations for the post of Congress president is now closed, and the key candidates that have filed the nomination are Mallikarjun Kharge and Shashi Tharoor. Now, Tamanna Inamdar, senior editor of Times Network, spoke to the Congress presidential candidate Shashi Tharoor, where he refutes charges on Parivar control, adding that the Congress workers are hungry for change. Watch this exclusive interaction.
The race for who will be the next Congress president has turned into a potboiler of sorts with every twist and turn imaginable. And now we have a situation where Dr. Shashi Tharoor is one of the two front runners. It's quite interesting because a month ago, when the first hint of him possibly running began, we covered that story. And at that point, many believed he would not probably file his nomination. Well, he has today, and we're speaking with him. The three-time MP from Thiruvananthapuram joining us now. Dr. Tharoor, thank you so much for speaking with us. What finally gave you the push to file your nomination?
Oh, well, I mean, I think the fact is that there was an extraordinary amount of enthusiasm, far more than I had any reasonable right to expect, from party workers across the country, urging me to put my name forward. And I did realize there was a hunger out there for change in a constructive way. We're all loyal Congress people, but we want to see the Congress party sort of moving on from its current situation, which frankly has put us in a fair amount of trouble, both in public perception and within the party, that some colleagues have left the party, that there's a sense that we are sort of in the doldrums. I think two things have changed that perception in the recent weeks. One has been Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra, which has picked up a tremendous amount of public enthusiasm. And the second is this presidential election, where suddenly people are waking up to the fact that this is the one party that's prepared to throw open its internal leadership to a vote within its own party workers. And with that kind of spirit and that sort of mood for change, I came along. And I think it's, though the presidential election is an internal exercise, it's clearly an opportunity to ignite widespread public interest in the Congress. So we can galvanize our party workers and get public interest in one go. That's why this election is so interesting, and I'm delighted to be a part of it.
I must ask you about the entire Rajasthan fiasco. And does that highlight some of the inherent issues maybe that you will try and fix if you become the next Congress president? It started out as a nomination, turned into a threat to a current Congress-led government in Rajasthan, and one doesn't really know what happens next. Why was this situation allowed to go out of control?
Tamanna, I don't think it's right for me to comment on a particular process of which I was not a part, and I wouldn't know what assurances were privately made, what promises were given that weren't fulfilled, or whatever else that may or may not have happened. So you can't comment knowledgeably when you've not been part of the process. I will say that in general, I do intend, once I've submitted my nomination papers, to put out a manifesto to the electorate, which is 9,100 Congress workers. And that would be a manifesto that I hope, would reform and re-energize our party. And that would involve much more decentralization of authority, a greater increase in consultative mechanisms within the party, and giving our karyakartas much more access to the leadership at all levels. I don't just mean the leadership in Delhi, but state, district, block. There's a whole need for revival everywhere. And I think that's the spirit in which I think we need to try and shake the party up in a positive way. I think that, just as I said earlier, business as usual won't be enough. We will have to try and find ways in which we can actually reach out and energize and empower the ordinary party worker, fix the structural and organizational deficiencies that have so far impeded our recent efforts. Things have worked well in the past and have failed to work in recent years. Let's try and find something new that can actually work well within the party and with the public.
The critics and cynics, and actually the big question really, let me put this straight, is whoever the next Congress president is, and if it's you, will you be given a free hand? What will be the role of the Gandhis? Because the sense is that no matter who sits in that seat, the center of power will remain with the Gandhis. Do you think you will get a shot at making things change the way you see them?
Well, look, I think if they wanted to do that, they needn't have gone through the entire process of an election. They could have just asked Rahul Gandhi to withdraw his presidential resignation. He would have been president again within months. The entire working committee would have unanimously supported that, and so would the majority of party workers. So I think that kind of argument, you use the word cynic when you began asking the question, it's unduly cynical, because honestly, they don't need to go through this elaborate procedure in order to reaffirm their own power. I think they've chosen consciously to step back, and they have deliberately, and when, Digvijay Singh went to submit his nomination papers, one of the first things he did, I'm touched to say, was he came to see me. And we had a very friendly conversation, wished each other well. And he mentioned to me, Shashi, she told me exactly what she told you. She doesn't want to take sides in this election. She really wants the party to find its own leader. And I believe that's genuinely the case. So if she wanted to continue to remote control the party, she need not have put the party through this exercise. And I don't believe, therefore, that the cynics are right. When you can get that result by much simpler techniques, why would you go through to this elaborate procedure to get that result?
No, but I'll tell you why that question's being asked. And you spoke about Sonia Gandhi, but what about Rahul Gandhi, who has stepped down from the president's position for a while, but does continue to call the shots? And the concern is, will that situation continue even later?
Look, Rahul Gandhi was in a particular situation, but the interim president of the party, who happened to be his mother, was the one taking the decisions and was ultimately accountable for them. And I think she would resent if anyone suggested to her that she was not the one signing off on the decisions of the party. So I would say that as far as Sonia Gandhi ji is concerned, that she is the president till the day she hands over to another president. But once she hands over, I don't see why she would want to be, or any member of her family would want to be a sort of shadow president. I do see the DNA, as it were, of the Congress party inextricably tied and linked to the DNA of the Gandhi-Nehru family. No doubt about that. But that doesn't have to manifest itself in, quote-unquote, being the center of power, as you put it. There are many other ways, morally and otherwise, in being sort of the conscience of the party, that the Gandhi family can continue to exercise a great influence. And let me say, from the point of view of the party, that we would be foolish to let go of the considerable advantages we enjoy from the popular appeal of the Gandhi-Nehru family, and particularly of each individual member of it. Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra is a huge success. It's attracting people literally in droves. There are oceans of people out there to see him, to wave at him, to cheer him on.
So what would their role be?
Ultimately, is a good.
What would their role be?
At the moment, he's leading a march that's getting the message of the Congress across. That march will continue beyond the presidential election. It's a 150-day march. The presidential election will be over in 20 days from now. So we're talking of something that will continue. And in fact, you could well argue that he couldn't possibly, had he been president, devoted this much of time to marching. So let's face it, he's doing something very different that is supportive of the Congress's objectives and ideology, and that is at the same time a distinct role within it. I think that's a great template, and we can find, again, depending on what the Gandhi family wishes to do, I'm sure we can find various attractive ways that the Congress party can greatly continue to benefit from the wisdom, the appeal, the passion, and the charisma that the Gandhi family brings to bear on this party.
Do you think you have a chance? Because since the news broke that you may contest, many people who are also supporters of the Congress have asked the question, is Mr. Shashi Tharoor the right leader for a pan-India party? You're English-speaking, impeccably English-speaking. You are an intellectual. Your grasp on Hindi may not be as proficient as in English, and you have a nuanced approach to political issues. Do you think in this contest with Mr. Digvijay Singh, you stand a good chance?
I think that's for the voters to decide, Tamanna, and I'll abide by their decision. But let me say two things straight away. My entire life is totally pan-Indian. I'm a Malayali who was born abroad, grew up in Bombay, went to high school in Calcutta and college in Delhi. I have friends, connections, and experienced life in all four corners of the country. So that's as pan-Indian as I can get. I don't think anybody else in politics can crave such a pan-Indian background. Second, yes, I am proud of my sort of fluency in English, but I have won 3 elections making speeches in Malayalam. I connect with voters in a constituency which, though it's the capital of Kerala, Thiruvananthapuram, is also 66% rural. And there are fisher folk and hill dwellers and Adivasis amongst my voters, and I win. Thirdly, I give sound bites in Hindi every day as I come out of Parliament to all the Hindi channels who approach me. It's not as if Hindi is a foreign language to me. I speak it. I don't pretend to be able to master it, and I certainly don't have anything of the fluent oratory of Mr. Modi. But don't you think that the Hindi belt has heard enough fluent Hindi speeches and not seen enough real action on the ground? Action has no language. You improve the lives of people. You give them employment. You try and control the conditions under which their economy is growing or not growing. You try and make the right intelligent policies that will help people's lives improve. That's all that you need. It doesn't matter which language you do it in. Help people. And I can seriously argue Mr. Modi will out-talk the rest of us. But look at his delivery record. Look at the demonetization. Look at the highest unemployment levels ever recorded. Look at the challenges facing our business community today. Look at all of this and tell me whether the high speeches are enough in this country's politics. So if that's what people want, they've got Mr. Modi. If they want serious policy analysis and discussions and decisions that will actually improve their lives, they should come back to the Congress.
Since you brought up Mr. Modi, this is a question I've been meaning to ask you. In a difference in approach that, say, Mr. Rahul Gandhi has vis-a-vis Mr. Modi, he is very strident in his criticism, has inferred to him as dictator several times, versus your approach where you haven't held back from praising him on some occasions. In fact, in 2019, you tweeted, I have argued for 6 years now that Narendra Modi should be praised whenever he says or does the right thing, which would add credibility to our criticism when he errs. Will you continue to have that approach if you are the next Congress president?
That's a question of personal style. It's not an ideological difference. I am profoundly committed to the same values and principles as Rahul Gandhi. We are both profoundly secular. We believe that the BJP's majoritarian bigotry is bad for the country. We feel passionately that our country should be an inclusive land where people all have the same rights, irrespective of language, region, religion, caste, and so on. And that kind of ideology, there's absolutely no difference. My own style tends to be, perhaps after so many years in international diplomacy, I've learned to get along with people I don't agree with and try and persuade them to come along. And sometimes I believe that works very well, and sometimes I know that some people find I've been too reasonable. I do believe, for example, that my support for the Swachh Bharat campaign was somewhat misunderstood, because when I supported it, I supported the idea of sanitation and cleanliness, which goes back to Mahatma Gandhi, I might add. But I did say in my very first acceptance message, which was tweeted at the time, that if it's just going to be a series of photo ops, I'm not for it. So it's not that I just was taken in, as some of my critics alleged. I thought that the objective was laudable, and the Prime Minister lending the prime ministerial platform to sanitation was a visionary act, and it should be supported. I supported International Yoga Day. I supported the World Sufi Conference. I supported the World Buddhist Conference. These are all initiatives of the government that I was willing to praise. Now, it doesn't matter that they are made by a party we disagree with on other reasons, because the truth is that on none of these specific issues would the Congress necessarily say we would have done differently had we been in power. In fact, what we could argue is we would have done better follow-up. There should have been more consistent follow-up on Swachh Bharat. There should have been more consistent follow-up on the World Sufi Conference, the World Buddhist Conference, which were both one-shot events that never got repeated. So there are things that the government has had good ideas for, but they've always lagged behind in implementation, and that's something we can point out. I still think that GST could have been a good idea. It was badly implemented. I think demonetization was a bad idea, and it was also badly implemented. So the fact is there are very specific things we can point to. I don't see any particular disloyalty to the party or the party ideology in occasionally, as a matter of style, saying there are some things from the government that I'm prepared to see the merits of. Because the truth is, nobody's all bad, and certainly nobody's all good.
But is there space for that nuance, sir, in the cut and thrust of Indian politics? And especially if you're going to have the responsibility of leading your party against a mammoth contender in 2024, can you keep that sort of middle line and that nuanced view?
We'll have to see. I think it's very clear that one of the challenges is going to be to mount not only a very strong and credible Congress party, but also to mount an opposition coalition or alliance or partnership amongst different parties. Because it's a standing reproach of the opposition that Mr. Modi came to power with such big majorities, having won only 31 and then 37% of the vote. If 63% of the public, as recently as 2019, did not agree with Mr. Modi's vision of India, then we are also at fault for not finding a common minimum program which would have prevented us from dividing our votes. So these are all things we need to sit down and talk through. And so once we do that, we can talk about what kind of effective response we can give the Modi government. But I'm very confident that those who say that 24 is a done deal are wrong. There's a great deal more that we can accomplish. And I think the revival of the Congress party, starting with this election, is the first important step in heading in that direction.
So what is on top of your to-do list if you do take on the top job? I remember the G23 letter. There was talk about, avoiding micromanagement, about empowering state-level Congress organizations even more. So what's on top of your list?
Yeah, I think certainly internal party reform, rebuilding is vital, because that's really what the party is crying for right now. And I think we'd have to focus on that to begin with. There's no question that re-energizing the party after our recent electoral setbacks is vital. Decentralizing authority within it, doing much more to empower state leaderships, district leaderships, block leaderships, increase the consultative mechanisms at all levels, and give our karyakartas more access to the leaders who take decisions that affect their daily working lives. All of this is going to be a very, very major priority. So when I submit my papers, there will be a manifesto that lays this out in more detail that the party workers can digest and see if they like.
I just want to talk to you a bit about 2024, and you briefly outlined that the opposition will have to come together. Now, the problem with that attempt in the past is the number of opposition leaders who think they should be leading the effort and should be the prime ministerial candidate. How do you solve that issue when you have so many competing ambitions?
I know what you're saying, Tamanna, but honestly, let's have this election done with first and see who's going to be leading the Congress. Whoever leads the party will have their own perspective, and whoever they talk to in the other parties will have their own perspective. You can't really impose one point of view when you're talking about building partnerships. You have to listen. And I think one of the things that I've learned in my years at the UN is that listening is as important as speaking. And that's the spirit in which I would have to move forward in taking other people's views into account. But I do believe that what's more important is a partnership that is putting things together through something like a common minimum program than worrying about individuals and leaders right now.
Sam, your message to Congress workers who believe that only a Gandhi should be leading the party, and the weight of responsibility, if you do make it as Congress president, of being a non-Gandhi leading this party?
Well, look, I think it's very clear that many, many people in the party, arguably a majority of the party workers, would have liked to see a Gandhi member, particularly Rahul Gandhi, continue. In fact, when following the 2019 Lok Sabha election, he offered his resignation as the party's president and told MPs that he was taking accountability for our stinging defeat. I was one of the very many who tried to talk him out of it. I said, look, you are taking accountability for the defeat, but who will take accountability for the revival? But he was clear. He said, that's got to be somebody else. And he stuck to his guns for 3 years. Now, it's very clear that he's serious. He doesn't want that position. The party workers who would have rather seen him there will have to accept they're not going to see him there, at least not now. And then the workers will have to choose who they want to see in this position. If at the end of the day, they choose one of us, then either of us is a non-Gandhi. So that question then becomes academic and we move on. But I certainly would insist that we want the Gandhi family to be involved in the party and to stay very much a part of it, because their ethos is completely inextricably tied in to our ethos and value system.
Will you try and reach out to long-time Congress leaders who've left the party recently, Ghulam Nabi Azad, Kapil Sibal, among a few other members of the G23?
Personally, yes. I mean, it's often difficult to call back a train that has left the station. But I can say that once the party has revived itself and shown that it is no longer the party they chose to leave, then perhaps they could reconsider. And not just them, I hope that part of this broader umbrella coalition or partnership we might want to build, we might turn to many others of Congress parentage, as it were, who have strayed from the fold. So I hope that we can certainly be an embracing institution.
Just last question, sir, and I know you have a very hectic schedule, but one more question. What will be some of your priorities and preparation for this role if you do take it on? Will improving your spoken Hindi or working on your spoken Hindi be one of them, since most of the seats in 2024 do come from the Hindi heartland?
देखिए, हमारे देश में अगर राजनीति करना चाहते हो तो हिंदी बोलना ही पड़ेगा, और मैं बोल रहा हूँ मेरे तरीके से। जिस दिन कोई यूपी का नेता आके मेरे जैसे अगर मलयालम बोलेंगे तब तो मैं शर्मिंदा हो जाऊंगा, लेकिन मैं अब ये कहूँगा कि मैं इतना हिंदी बोल सकता हूँ ताकि लोग मुझे समझे और मैं उनकी आशाओं, उनके कठिनाइयाँ समझ सकूँ।
अमेजिंग, बढ़िया है। बहुत बहुत मुबारक आपको इस नॉमिनेशन के लिए, और बेस्ट ऑफ लक for your endeavors. Thank you so much, Shashi Tharoor.
Thank you, Tamanna. Very good speaking to you. All the best.